da, da. The drum also waltzes. Yes, it does. The drum also waltzes is sort of like, it's a take 5, but in waltz time. Take 5 is like a drum also waltzes, but in 5 time. The concepts are almost identical. Anyway, in Bonhamville, Bonham cops the drum also waltzes in early renditions of Moby Dick. Pretty much. I didn't even realize really it was till as late as 71. Check out my Moby Dick live videos that I have. I have a series of 6 of them, which addresses the Moby Dick after he dropped using this, okay? But Sam GW, one of the Bonzolian fans, God love you, Broham or Sistam. I know you're Sam. Sometimes Sam can be. Sam's like Pat. Or even Terry. I'm Terry. I go to places, I order a drink or so, well, like a Starbucks, and Terry, it says T-E-R-R-I. It's a Y. But so here we are. Remember, there's only 2 of the 3 triplet notes happening. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and or 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet. You're not going or you know what I'm saying? We're just doing 2 of the 3, like in a shuffle. Remember. Remember what you're doing there, that's a triplet, but you're only playing 2 of the notes with the hand. You're not going. You're going. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Does this sound familiar? That's what Bonham does at the head. Actually, technically what he does, it's weird. That last, it's kind of complicated in a sense. I don't know if he meant it to kind of be a little complicated or cool that way in the front end Moby Dick when he sort of copped the drum also waltzes. But it is kind of cool. All right, well here, I guess I'll talk about it. All right, so here. Da-da-la-la-la, da-da-la-la. Now you can think about that first bass drum note. What drew me off about it sometimes is that first bass drum note. If you think about it as a 1, then you'll have this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. But I think technically in the drum also waltzes and the way that Bonham is performing it, the 1 is actually the hat. Okay, so instead of 1 and 2 and you have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, as I just showed with the 1, 2, 3, correct? But I think because the way it sounds in Moby Dick is he launches that drum also waltzes portion right out of the downbeat. Like that ba is that bass drum, which should be like the 1, right? You think it would. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. But in the spirit of I think the way drum also waltzes actually goes by Max Roach, that would be the going in. So instead of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and it's 1, 2, 3. That stuff's really ultimately in playingville and listeningville, neither here nor there. In the sense that as long as every other note you play is relative to where these 2 go. Unless you get to a point where a new section comes in and something starts what would be on the 1, and you're like, wait, I thought that was the 1. How come that's not starting there? Kind of like the beginning of We're Gonna Groove. On the front end of We're Gonna Groove, it sounds like Bonham's leaving like a note out. Like, why is he waiting? Shouldn't it be like an extra note in there? Because Bonham's playing that intro exactly as it occurs later in the song. So, Okay? Not. Okay, that's kind of a. You don't have to go there with me now, but you'll understand what I'm talking about if you stop and thought about that. So we really don't know. My assumption for teaching or showing or demonstrating is that I would think as we're doing the ostinato, is that we're considering the bass drum the or the lit. If you're going one triplet, two triplet, the bass drum is the one and or one triplet, and then the foot is the number. 1, 2, 3, okay? So, here we are. You know, bottom. So, da la 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 la. Now, there's something real interesting there. Right at that, I played that about 97% accurately. I don't think I might have started. It was more or less there, but my point is there. What is my point? My point is that freaking Royal Albert Hall, so the solo paradigm of Moby Dickville, with the drum also waltzes that we hear, that you'll hear it on the Osaka stuff, like How the East Was Won, and also here in the Royal Albert Hall, and also on the studio version of Moby Dick. So what happened was when they did Moby Dick, Bonham and the guys, they went and they recorded a quick intro. All right, and they went in and they did the outro, and then Bonham went and just like played for 15 or 20 minutes, and then Jimmy Page and Bonham, well, I'm presuming Bonham was there too. I don't think he might have been, because I think if you listen to the studio recording of Moby Dick, it's good, but there's some shiny stuff you wish that they'd put in, and when you hear there's a whole slew of stuff that was like was what Jimmy Page could choose from to put in Moby Dick. There's a lot of really tasty stuff that's very similar to the Royal Albert Hall stuff that's not on the record. And remember, the Moby Dick, like on the record, is really just like. I mean, there's just a lot of more sort of banal stuff, even though it's still great. I mean, it's still the Studio 9 Zeppelin 2 version of Moby Dick is still great, but there's a lot of cooler stuff from that era, the Drum Also Waltzes era, Bonham, that would have been really good included in there. Remember, Bonham does that, even in the Moby Dick studio, but it doesn't turn up on the record. Okay? So, you know what we're going to do? We'll have George and I, it's really got to be George though, do a nice dissection of the Moby Dick Royal Albert Hall performance. I mean, that is like the Royal Albert Hall Moby Dick. Remember, the Moby Dick series, as I've said, that I just put up recently, and almost all the time I ever address Moby Dick live, it has to do with like the Bonham engine and a cool little riff he did to build off. It's not this like Led Zeppelin 2 album version or the Royal Albert Hall where the Drum Also Waltzes, Max Roach's Drum Also Waltzes, has anything to do with it. Okay? Bonham then would go from this into like that, and then kind of work his way up into something like which sort of then gestated into what the Bonham engine Moby Dick thing. But anyway, so the Drum Also Waltzes. The Drum Also Waltzes is a waltz version of Take 5. Take 5 is a Take 5 version of the Drum Also Waltzes. You know what I mean? It's just that Take 5 is in 5. Like the Drum Also Waltzes could be Take 3. Take 5 could be called the Yes Genesis King Crimson Also Waltzes. Right? Correct? So, all right, so let me just ask around with this. So, oh, I know what. Now, here, Salmon said in that other video, what I was doing in the other video, well, there were two things I was doing incorrectly. One was this. See, I'm hitting that last note. Bonham didn't do that, nor did Roach. It's literally.
not. Okay? It's really neat. The Max Roach's The Drum Also Waltzes. And Bonham does some really cool stuff in there. It's really interesting in the Royal Albert Hall performance, what he does. Like on the studio recording, he does like the... I'm sorry. I see. This is where I need some Adderall or something. I should look into that. But I'd rather, I think, do like a beta blocker. But for my blood pressure is normally so low that if I took a beta blocker, I think I would just be like, permanently. All right, anyway, so what was I saying? Oh, so yeah, in the studio version, the outtakey stuff of Moby Dick that you can find online. Bonham does that, but as he gets out of that, he goes right into this. So he goes. You might do that a couple times, but then he goes right into. He goes right into that, okay? And on the studio recording, I think I do hear a ching ring on there. Anyway. But on the Royal Albert Hall version, he doesn't do that. What he does is the hi-hat doesn't suddenly go. He actually does something which is kind of neat. Remember, when we do a triplet, 1 and 2 and 3 triplet, 4 triplet, remember, we're playing just 2 of the 3 notes. 1, 2, 3, lit 4, lit 1, correct? Bonham does a thing where the hi-hat pattern he goes to right after that, where you have, let's say, this on the number 1, 2, 3, 4, and you have the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and instead of going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and he plays like the triplet, except like every other. So he'll go like. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and that's clever. It can throw you off easily if you're not really sure what he's doing. Like it seems like, well, wait a minute, is he changing the whole time signature of those singles? Like he's not going, and he's not going. And he doesn't seem to be doing like a what the hell is it called? Remember what's? I'm sorry. What the hell is that? Oh, a herda. He doesn't seem to be doing a herda. What he's doing is the whole triplet thing's happening. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. He might not be thinking of it that way, but that's what his foot's playing. And then he has that cool, that herda stuff on top. And it's cool. The first one he plays starts when in what would be in the opposite position. So not. But where the hi-hat's up, with the hi-hat, the kick drum, so like, see how that last one hit at the same time as the hat? The second one he does starts at the same time as the hat. Okay? It's interesting. Like the bass drum, it's really interesting on the front end of Royal Albert Hall. He changes it up a little. Like you think he's going to play the exact same thing again, except his bass drum plays the first note that the hands did the first time around, if that makes sense, right? So it's like, hang on a second here.